This video is going to be split into two parts. One where I'm explaining my problems with the current state of PvP, and then I'm going to go over the changes they're doing to PvP. It's just so you can get an impression that's not biased towards their changes before I read them. I've not seen or read the changes yet, so this is going to be interesting. I think the PvP situation is very dire at the moment, and it's not necessarily because of PvP, but it's an amplifier. So let's get this straight. Let's start where it all begins. The game. The game itself has had a population decrease of 90% since the DLC dropped, and essentially it's not going up at all. Maybe next episode, which I'm hoping with the changes they're making, it's going to spike a little bit and stay higher than it is right now. But at the current state we're in, it does not seem so. The changes they made last week are actually really good. They changed the sandbox and changed and tuned some weapons in a good way. I think weapons are a little bit more balanced now compared to what they were before. SMGs are incredibly powerful with the target lock buff. 340s aren't as one-sided gunfights as they used to. That's mostly what they did. But 450 pulse rifles are essentially the pulse rifle we traded for 340s. 450s are incredibly strong right now, and if you enjoy using something like Outbreak Prime, I would recommend giving them a try. 720 autos are incredibly good, and essentially, they're just longer range SMGs. Okay, so let me give you my thoughts for the current state of PvP. Trials has a problem, and this problem is probably not what you expect. I think it's a loot problem, and I have a good reason for this. So let me explain something to you for how I'm thinking about this. I've been playing this game for forever. I wouldn't say my stats are that crazy, but at least I can go flawless consistently. Going flawless isn't necessarily a matter of skill, but a matter of how much you're willing to play. I'm willing to play enough to go flawless. And even solo queuing, it's not really a challenge of if I can, but how much I need to play. I stopped playing this game seriously a while back, and I kind of just play very casually. I don't really care if I win or lose, and if there's something I'm after, I will of course try to get it. But since none of the current Trials weapons are pleasing for most people, there's not really a reason to play for most people. So right now, the 6 rotating Adept weapons in Trials will be the Summoner, a 600 RPM solar auto rifle, the Prophet, a 120 stasis scout rifle, Aisha's Care, a 324 RPM Strand pulse rifle, Shayura's Wrath, a 600 RPM Void SMG, Yesterday's Question, a 257 RPM Arc Handkin, and Tomorrow's Answer, a 15 RPM rocket launcher. That's Void. Now, out of these 6 weapons, I would only say that 3 of them are even sought after. And this would be the Summoner, Aisha's Care, and Shayura's Wrath. The 3 others are very gimmicky, and most people wouldn't even care for them. The rocket launcher isn't even a meta pick for PvP, even though it has god roll perks. Yesterday's Question is a 2-burst handkin, and even in PvE I wouldn't even consider that a meta pick. And the Prophet is just a worst DMT that's legendary. And it doesn't have the hipfire consistency as a DMT has, and it overall is just a really mid archetype of weapon. The 600 RPM Summoner isn't even that pleasing. Totally, this thing would not be meta. You would much rather just use Kvastov because it has a higher damage value, or a 720 now, because 720s are really good. Shayura's Wrath is probably the best SMG with the most range, and it's the arch nemesis of Unending Tempest. They have essentially the same traits, but Shayura's Wrath has slightly better. So Shayura's Wrath would be the best out of the 6 weapons, but even still it's an SMG, so there's still stigma around the gun itself for people actually wanting to use it. Aisha's Care is a pretty good 2-burst pulse rifle, and I would say it's a go-to gun for after all the buffs. But overall, I would only really care about Shayura's out of all of these guns. Personally, I don't really care about the other weapons at all. I have my good rolls and I don't use them whatsoever. Even Shayura's Wrath is a gun I rarely use. I would much rather use Unending Tempest. So here we have a problem where, why would I get a gun that is essentially the same thing as another gun? The only difference is, it's harder to get. Well, you can say that about a lot of weapons in the game, But even for trials, it over-rewards you a lot. And when I say that, I mean I can complete one game of trials and get 15 rocket launchers to drop because I'm playing in a 3-stack. Me playing any other game mode in this game, it makes me feel unrewarded. I've been over-rewarded by trials for so long after all these loot changes they've done that everything else in the game feels not rewarding in any sense whatsoever. I can't do a GM, because when I do a GM, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Why would I do a GM that takes me X amount of time when I can just do 2 games of trials and be guaranteed an adept weapon almost every time? Of course, this does mean I need to go flawless for the weekend, but after that, I can literally just play and keep getting adept drops. I have managed to fill a whole page of my vault just because of this change with adept guns in one weekend. This is how I looked when I was actually trying to get the Godroll Igneous Hammer, and I'm still on a 4 out of 5 for my Godroll. And especially when they have pleasing guns that people want to farm for, they remove them, essentially, meaning you have a limited time to get it, and sure, whenever there's a good gun, it means you feel forced to play, but whenever there's bad guns, you don't want to play. Because why waste your time on something you're never going to use? It's going to get nerfed, essentially, at one point. You have seen Immortal, the best gun in the game, no one uses it anymore. Even though Immortal is really good right now. But let's say I wanted to go for the Godroll Immortal. Right now, I can only get a non-adept Immortal by focusing from Saint 14. It costs 25,000 Glimmer per engram, and 3 engrams per focus. So, my current Immortal roll has 75 range, and this is boosted by Adept range, and if I wanted to include my Keep Away, it would be 85. Now, the max range roll on an Immortal, if you Keep Away on the gun, would be 90. So essentially, I have one trade-off that I would replace in my Immortal, and that would be Hammer Forged to Full Bore. No matter what roll I get on my Immortal, my max range will always be 70, and with Keep Away, 80. So I can never actually beat my adept range even though it's not a Godroll. It doesn't matter if I get the 5 out of 5 Immortal on a normal version, it will never be able to compete. Even though the new mods are in the game, they don't affect older guns. I can't enhance my traits and I can't put the +7 stability and range mod on my Immortal. So again, it would be irrelevant. It's the same thing for my Forgiveness. It's the same thing for my Inquisitor. It's the same thing for my Eye of Soul. It's the same thing for every single gun that I have out of the Trials weapons. Igneous Hammer is kind of irrelevant, but it's the same thing. If I wanted the 5 out of 5, I would need an Adept gun. I have a 4 out of 5, and all I'm missing is a Masterwork. So no matter how much I try, I will never be able to compete with my Adept version stats. This is the reality of most guns, and especially if you are a player who farms but doesn't get necessarily the 5 out of 5, who wants the 5 out of 5, will have problems with. This is my problem, and it's one of the reasons I simply don't care about farming for any of the normal versions, because they wouldn't compete with my Adept version counterparts, even though they're not the Godroll I wanted. And on top of that, most of these guns are not enhanceable, if not almost all of them. Another problem. So, 90% of the guns that you can get from Trials feels unrewarding to the fullest. How do you fix this? Well, you would first reprise all the guns, add their adept versions to be focusable, and make them all enhanceable. This is something that's unrealistic and would never happen, but it is a thought that would make people play more, especially if you want people to get their guns like they want them to. It's the same for Nightfalls. It's the same for Iron Banner, even though they don't have adepts. It's the same for even the Vogue weapons, to reprise them, to give them new traits, and etc. It's like this for all these guns that people want to, but have no reason to. But that's just the loot aspect. The game mode itself is flawed. Right now, if I solo queue, there's a big chance I'm going to match a duo, and depending on which duo I get, depends on who I lose to. So, if I get the better duo, I will most likely win, and if I get the worst duo, I will most likely lose every single time, because these two people have synergy, and these two people have a chemistry. They can communicate easier, they can do this and that, and they will most likely be able to play as a team better than someone who is solo queuing. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that they're unbeatable, it just means you have a completely unfair advantage, and you are most likely going to lose. Duo queue is something that's been complained about for the longest time, and The day that it dropped, I said, I quote, "This will be the easiest way to go flawless." It's a few years later now, and I think I was pretty spot on. If I want to go flawless, I just get my duo on. And most of the time, I do, when I do need to go flawless. But most of the time, I don't really care, so I solo queue a lot. If I want to have fun, I trio queue. But now I want to talk about the most important topic of trials specifically. So, right before the final shape dropped, we got an update called Checkmate. This added a new ammo system, and it changed basically everything about PvP. It increased cooldowns on abilities, it reduced how much special people had, and it allowed for more primary gunfights. And the feedback we were getting during Checkmate was very positive. And essentially, this positivity was something people expected to become the norm. And their expectations, at the end of the day, got kind of shit on. If you look now, over the course of the final shape, Bungie was still experimenting with the special bricks. People were not having a problem, and mostly it was positive feedback. Then they just said nah. They started experimenting by adding bricks into the game, and people were complaining. There was just too much special from what people were promised. People were promised a more balanced special economy, and less just crutch special and win. Right now, if I launch competitive, for example, I can fight someone who gets only kills with heavy and special weapons the whole game. He will never need to shoot his primary whatsoever because of ammo bricks that spawn around the map. And this allows people to just die, respawn, pick up a brick. Now you have 2 special shots. You can kill 2 people with diffusion, die again, do the same thing, rinse and repeat, over and over and over and over again. But comp is different from trials. Now trials, you spawn in with 1 ammo every round, and within 30 seconds of the game, there will be a green brick spawning on each side of the point. So, towards the center of the map, not in your spawn like it was when they originally played around with this idea, but on each side of the map. So you're going to have to move, and then you can get the brick, and then you have 2 shots for practically just breathing. Now, when we had Checkmate and the ammo meter system, you had to get kills or assists and do objectives, res, etc. Whatever you had to do, this would give you progress on a bar that eventually would give you special ammo. The biggest complaint I heard about this was this became a butterfly effect. But the one thing people seem to forget about, special weapon kills didn't actually give you special weapons. Only assists, revives, dying, and etc. So even if you were dying every round, you were guaranteed special, and by the end of it, you were essentially getting 1 green per kill. Almost. Not quite, but almost. So essentially, we were in a very comfortable spot with this ammo meter system for Bungie to just completely scrap it. And I think that's where I at least lost faith in something that I was really promised on. Bungie were committing to it. And not just that. They also, how you remember, I said they reduced the regeneration on abilities. Now, when Prismatic dropped, this just said nah. It was an unbelievable mess, where if you didn't play Prismatic, you were basically guaranteed to lose, so Hunters got killed. Now, Titans haven't really been changed, except for buffing it really, which kind of worries me. But they did do one change. That was reduce Prismatic regeneration by 30%. Now this is a problem, because let's bring you to the example of Titans. Before this update that happened last week, whenever you dodged, you had something called Crest of Alpha Lupi on your mark that would heal you and your allies, the same value as it normally would when you placed a barricade. The difference between thrusters and barricades is the cooldown. Thrusters regenerate just as fast as a hunter dodge, but barricades essentially 3 times as long. So you have a very big advantage, and you don't even compete with Wormhusk. You outshine Wormhusk because you also heal your allies. The only trade-off from the normal chest piece and the mark would be you do not regenerate more orbs from your super, which is not really relevant when you're playing Prismatic because you can pair Alpha Lupi with Synthoceps and get a stronger melee. Essentially, this is broken, and Bungie nerfed it for that exact reason. But increasing cooldowns by 30% in Prismatic doesn't really change the problem. Hunters have only CC abilities, crowd control, which would be clones, smokes, swarm grenades, dusk fields, and a slow dodge. And one thing you're going to notice is Hunter melee is bound to their dodge, and the 2 aspects it has is bound to their dodge. Now these 2 aspects do increase its regeneration, but it's still the fastest cooldown ability in the game. So at the same time, you increased it by 30%, you nerfed the 2 aspects to make your dodge longer, it's still going to be a very fast ability. And remember, every time you dodge, you get your smoke. So you're going to have infinite smokes, and you're constantly going to have the uptime on the clone and slow dodge. It gives you a very big advantage compared to other classes. Now let's go to Titan. Titan has 2 aspects that are the meta: Diamond Lances and Knockout. Both of these do not rely on ability recharge, because Knockout, every time you break someone's shield and kill someone with a melee, you get health regeneration, Radiant, a Diamond Lance, and orbs with the seasonal artifact. If you spec into it, you get 3 orbs. So essentially, you get your super the first, you get a one-shot kill constantly, and you heal more than other classes because you also have a fragment that regenerates you whenever you get a melee kill. And you have a mark that heals you whenever you have your thrusters. Again, short cooldown and no cooldowns. So essentially, the change doesn't affect it at all. Now Warlocks is interesting because this one actually do suffer from cooldowns, but there's a problem. Warlocks have an ability called Arcane Needle. It's a melee that you get 3 times. But if you use the Claws of Ahamkara, the exotic, you get a 4th one. You can pair this with the aspect Lightning Surge, which give you 4 one-shot melees. Almost one-shot. Which is a CC crowd control ability. And it can kill a whole team with 1 melee. The melee itself is shit, but when you pair it with Lightning Surge, it's really good. But since you have 4 of them, you can also do this infinitely throughout the whole game and always have it up essentially. So the problem with Prismatic is their uptime is still too high for them to be considered bad or balanced compared to every other subclass, because all the other subclasses have downsides and upsides for every ability. The 2 strongest non-Prismatic subclasses in the game, in my opinion, would be Void Hunter and Solar Warlock. But besides Prismatic, I don't actually have a problem. I don't have too big of a problem, essentially, with the sandbox of abilities. I definitely think Prismatic is making uptimes a little bit too high, if not constant. But that is what I think about the current state of abilities, essentially. Now, I have one more problem with PvP until I come down to my conclusion, and why people essentially don't play as much, or why don't people want to play. And it's cheaters. This is something that probably wouldn't shock you at all, but this is also something I feel like Bungie isn't addressing enough. Apparently, the 2 main cheats have gotten sued by Bungie, and they needed money to sustain it. So, eventually, the subscriptions are going to run out. But apparently, a lot of people are also giving out free cheats that anyone can get their hands on. But this is a problem, because you're guaranteed to see these guys very often. I think one of the best things that's come out of this is something on Twitter called Destiny Cheating Report, or Destiny Hacking Report, which essentially tracks people who are cheating and just puts them on full blast. Now, if Bungie actually are taking notes from this guy and, looking into these accounts very, very wisely, is something completely different. But this guy's putting cheaters on full blast on Twitter, and it's hilarious. Every week. I love this guy. But that is essentially all my reasons for why I think PvP is shit. Prismatic is overtuned, Trials is in the shitter with loot and cheaters, so is Comp, and overall, I just think PvP is a very unenjoyable experience with how much special you have on top of what we're promised. Now, it's time to go into the changes, because now I'm curious what Bungie are going to do to fix it. And, I have no clue yet what it is, so I'm going to tell you that right now. But first, I just want to say, if you've made it this far into the video, I would appreciate if you liked and subscribe, and Game to Give is currently live. If you want to support Little Lights and, donate money to a good foundation, My link will be in the description. It doesn't really matter who you donate to, and even if you're just after the emblems, that's completely fine. Any money given to Game to Give is highly appreciated, and I don't really care if you choose to donate to me or someone else. But my link is down below if you want to donate through this. I'm kind of excited. Look, I kind of want to get this video out, so I'm gonna go through the changes very fast and what it is. So I'm gonna pull it out of my screen here, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts, just so you can understand what it is. I didn't realize how big this document was when I started reading it, and yes, it's currently almost 5 a.m., 4 a.m., and I need to get some sleep, but essentially, the whole reward system for trials is being changed, and it's being changed in a way where you will no longer need to go flawless. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to you to figure out. I'm not gonna lie. I think getting more rewards is not necessarily a bad thing as long as the rewards feels rewarding. Remember this, giving people more rewards from a very rewarding playlist, at least from my experience, will also give you the interpretation that loot doesn't mean anything. Loot will lose its value. And this is something that definitely happened to adept weapons. Adept weapons don't really feel rewarding compared to what they used to. When they added adept guns to trials, they used to be rare. They used to be like, wow, this guy went flawless. Because when trials dropped, you could get no adept weapons, then they added adept weapons, and you could get one per character every week. That's how it was in this game for the longest time. And then they added the farmable rewards. But essentially, there will be two systems. There will be weekly win streaks, which will determine the strength of your rewards, and there will be the repeatable Lighthouse chest reward, which you can get up until you reach a flawless passage, which is a 7 win streak. Because when you are on a 7 win streak, you get basically adept weapons very frequently, so you shouldn't need to worry about that whatsoever. But this system will also encourage people to play as a 3 stack, because if you get 7 wins as a 3 stack, when you get your 7 wins, which is the way you go to the Lighthouse now, not 7 win streak, you need 7 wins to go to the Lighthouse. If you get a win streak stronger than 3 or more, you will get a 100% chance of an adept gun, and if you do it as a trio, all 7 games, you will also have another additional 100% chance of getting an adept gun, meaning you are guaranteed 2 guns. Now, if you only get a 1 win streak, which would mean you win 7 separate games within, like, between losing, you would have 30%. And then you will have, and let's say one of these games you're playing as a 3 stack, and you won as a 3 stack, you will get an additional 15% chance of another adept gun. So they don't stack, they're just 2 separate guns. I think that's pretty cool. It gives people hopes whenever they go if they're not the best player. When you get a flawless passage now, you will also change your matchmaking. It will utilize weekly performance-based matchmaking if everyone in the fire team is on a flawless trials passage. But if this matchmaking starts to slow down your matchmaking, it will change back to open skill, which is just RNG, and it will just put you back into the RNG pool. But I don't know how I like this. It adds essentially flawless pull back into the game. It definitely was one of the worst experiences of trials ever. If literally all you need to do now is wait until the end of the weekend, you will match absolute burgers because everyone else is on a flawless passage, and you will just get the easiest games of your life. That's what you should do if you care about getting your KD up. I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting how they choose to do that, but it is what it is. They added some new armor and cosmetics. I don't really care too much about it. There's a new sniper, a new solar aggressive sniper that looks like the average Hawkeye sniper, and there's Exalted Truth, and the other weapon that will come later will be the Inquisitor. I think 3 guns is pretty cool to see, but I don't know how they're going to do the rotation completely. I wish they just made everything focusable and enhanceable out of the weapons. I can focus for an Adept Immortal, for example, and enhance its traits. I think that would be a cool thing. That doesn't mean I get it from my flawless chest. That doesn't mean it's the weakly flawless weapon, but just give us that option. I think that would be cool. They're also changing up the way Trials works. Zone will now spawn 40 seconds instead of 30 seconds, and zones will take 20 seconds to capture instead of 15 seconds to capture. And neutral crate spawns will spawn at 30 seconds into the game instead of 20. They're also changing fireteam-based matchmaking. They're not removing it completely, but let's say you're a solo and match duos. That means you will get a free game. Doesn't mean you lose or win. It means they will give you a free mercy, essentially. In comp and trials, if you match a duo, if a solo gets put into a stack lobby, that means they will get a protection game, meaning they can't lose the game even though they lose. Essentially, this is a way so you can still try to win even though you stick around. You know, a lot of people like to leave duo queue games, from what I've noticed, especially in trials and comp, especially if they get the worst duo. So this will encourage people to stay because it doesn't matter. You will get a protection if you stay into the game, meaning you won't get the loss, you won't lose your comp points, and if you win, you get the win, if that makes sense. I don't know. They're reworking the comp point system, basically making it a little bit more simple to understand. From what this means, it's a more solid system. Base value is now 100, and it can add or remove based on performance. So let's say the maximum win amount would be 170 gained, and the maximum loss amount would be 130, meaning you will always win more than you lose. But the minimum win amount is 70, and the minimum loss amount is 30. That is a pretty good change. They're adding a new BXR in comp, and 2 emblems. Iron Banner is getting 2 new guns, which would be Warlord Spear and Peace Bond, which is a stasis sidearm. Which is in the game currently, and you can get it currently as like right now, because Iron Banner is in the game. So if you want a role that this thing cannot get, I would go and farm it right now. Joxer's Longsword is a Void Heavy Burst Pulse Rifle that they're adding to Crucible. They are reducing lobby balance. I think that's a good thing. And then in the map weighting, this is massive by the way. Reduced Vostok and multiplex from average to below average weight, and then increased burnout from average to above average weight. I'm just saying we need some other maps that people are asking for. Just making sure that you know. Competitive removed Citadel Clash and multiplex Clash from the rotation. Removed Radiant Cliffs Clash from rotation. Increased weight of burnout Clash and Dead Cliffs Clash from average to high weight to compensate. I don't like burnout that much, I'm gonna be honest. I might have missed something, but... Oh, dude! Okay, I forgot about this. I actually said this today, when I was playing comp on stream. Whenever I'm contesting a zone in collision, why are the enemy team getting points when they have the zone? Shouldn't it be neither teams get the zone since we're contesting? But one of the changes they're making to comp is contesting a zone will now flip it to neutral so neither team gains points. This is a good thing. The zone will also show up faster now, but I still think there's things they should change about collision. You know, it is what it is. Let me just go over the TWAB very fast, because I think there's some things that I should probably mention from it. Renewal Grasp is getting a buff, giving you twice as fast frost armor when you have enhanced Duskfall grenades. That's pretty significant. Radiant Dance Machines improves airborne effectiveness and hipfire mobility, range, and accuracy from primary ammo weapons. Multi-kills with primary ammo refunds dodge energy. When dodge is nearly full, multi-kills grants extra charges. Powerful combatants and guardian counts as more than 1 kill. This exotic might be really good in PvP with a gun like the Last Word. All I'm saying. What is this? Okay, I'm looking here and I see the aim assist. Aiming at a target for a short time prevents another target moving very quickly across your reticle from dragging your aim off it. Controller only. Well, no shit. Why is it saying global then? Oh well. I guess because it counts for everywhere. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. Controllers are getting kind of buffed. I don't know. I mean, in PvE, I can see why that's annoying, but in PvP, it helps me actually shoot people better. Glaive significantly increased aim assist, aim magnetism, and damage fall-off ranges across the board for all glaives. Improved glaives projectile hit registration. Alcatraz is going to be loving this. Except for the increased aim assist part. He hates the drag. They're buffing aggressive frame fusion rifles. And if you don't know, there's only one aggressive in the game. And it's the Beyond Light one, the one that shoots sideways. Oh, that's going to be interesting if it's actually good now. They're also buffing support frame auto so it can heal better further away. For my PvE gamers, they're actually nuking assist frame sidearms. Lawrence Driver was once a terror in the Crucible, and since it caught a number of changes to its efficiency. Since then, it has struggled to compete in most activity types. We've made a few changes that will reward you for playing its bounty game successfully and keep it going in further encounters. Picking up a bounty tag now grants 1 ammo to the mag. What are you doing, Bungie? What are you doing? Triggering Ligarian Sight. By picking up a bounty tag, adds 6 ammo to the mag the first time you trigger it. Returns the adding 1 ammo per tag on extensions while the buff remains active. Amen, brother. Amen, brother. Well, well, well. My infinite special Lawrence Driver, welcome back. For context, you get a primary kill. You get a brick. If you pick up that guy who was tagged by Lawrence at the same time, you get another brick. You don't even need to kill him with Lawrence. You just get 2 bricks. That's interesting. Borealis is getting a stab buff by 20 stability and 10 aim assist. That's interesting, because they're reworking the exotic trait called the Fundamentals. It will now grant you a 10% damage buff in PvP. To this weapon, for 10 seconds, when you apply or receive an elemental keyword that matches the current selected damage type on this weapon, remove the effect no longer grants a stab base on the current element. But this might be insane for a gun like Dead Messenger, because Dead Messenger had a problem, and this problem is the slightly less damage than other waveframes, and it made it pretty bad. But with this 10%, maybe it's good now. Let's say you're using Solar Dead Messenger, you get Radiant. That might be really good. That's another 10%. Lord of Wolves. Increased range, reduced the base damage, remove accuracy penalties from standard fired mode. Release the Wolf now triggers on the hip fire instead of a special reload. Now Release the Wolf fires fully auto, greatly increases damage and fire rate, reduced accuracy and range. Well, it is from the hip. Catalyst. Reload speed and stability boosts are now built in. When Release the Wolves is active, dealing damage to targets scorches them. When ADS, defeating targets spread Scorch to nearby combatants. Interesting. I don't think this is a game breaker, but it's definitely interesting. On top of the weapons we were talking about earlier from Trials, Crucible, and Comp, and Iron Banner, they're also adding a few more. Lotus Eater, a Void Rocket sidearm. You have the Palindrome and Arc Adaptive Handcan. I'm guessing the 2 redacted perks on this gun will be Arc related. Vanguard Ops, which will have a sensor, a Strand Aggressive Rocket Launcher. Gambit will have an Arc Rapid Fire Glaive. Wait, this thing is just better than the Raid one. Yeah, this thing is just better than the Raid one. Oh well. The weapons that are leaving is going to be the Prophet, Undercurrent, Reese Walker, and Lethal Abundance. And that's kind of it. If there's anything I missed, I would highly appreciate you commenting it the description below. But I think essentially I've come to conclusion that Bungie's trying to fix certain things about the game that feels broken. There's of course things I would love to see them do, but I just highly doubt that's gonna happen. I think we're just gonna have to give it time. If you really care about this game, going back to its former glory, I think you're crazy, but I think it's possible. I think it's possible if Bungie puts the effort and time into fixing what people dislike. And it's not necessarily making it easier, it's also about giving people a reason to play. I think that's something people forget too from time to time. It's not necessarily always, is it hard or is it easy? Sometimes that's the problem. But anyway, I stream every day on Twitch, and I would recommend you to come and watch me stream, especially during Game to Give. I have cool incentives, and I'm going to be adding more the longer it goes on, and I'll be playing a lot of comp. So if you want to come and watch me, I would recommend go checking out my Twitch. That will also be in the description. But again, last time, if you want to support a good cause, Game to Give, I would highly appreciate if you could go into the link, and you don't even have to use my link. Just anyone who essentially is running for Game to Give, you can just donate to Bungie themselves. I don't really care. Just any money that goes to Game to Give is highly appreciative, and you can get some cool emblems. So a win-win situation, don't you think? Anyway, I love you all, and I'm sorry for just weekly uploads. If not, but it is what it is. Once I get back into the loop, I will give you the scoop. Anyway, I love you all.